Good morning and welcome again. This is Greg Aden with another edition of Servant Leadership Podcast. And today I have two wonderful guests coming to us live from the great state of Indiana. But first of all, Kim Biggerstaff, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? How did you end up doing what you're doing? And spend some time telling the audience why you do what you do.
Thanks, Greg. I'm thrilled to be a part of the Leadership Development Day. I think it's going to be a very exciting day. I am a retired marketer. I spent the last 20 to 25 years of my career focused on digital marketing. So websites, podcasts, social media, all of those things I did for a couple of major companies here based in Indianapolis. I ran into Ascent 121 at a church. They were presenting probably 6 years ago now, and talk about underserved kids. This one took my heart. I spoke to Megan McGuire, who's the president, CEO of Ascent, learned a bit about the agency, went on, call it a field trip right now, it's what they call their prayer journey, and learned a whole lot about what they do. And it really hit me hard. I immediately volunteered to start community education speaking, awareness education, speaking engagements, and then helping with fundraising wherever I could. And then 3.5 years ago, they asked me to serve on the board, and I just started my second board term. So I am devoted, I would say, to helping this agency be successful as folks like Stephanie actually work with the kiddos.
Wow. Talk about a servant heart. Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us. We're going to dig more into Ascent 121 and how they're partnering with Leadership Development Day this year. But again, thank you and welcome. Stephanie, tell us what you do, where you're from, and again, let's focus on why you do what you do.
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Indianapolis, so I'm home. I took a little jaunt up north to Chicago for school, but this is my home. I'm currently the clinical supervisor here at Ascent 121, and I work with an amazing team of clinicians and case managers and mentors who really just work hard together to meet the needs of the youth and the families we serve. I was truly blessed. I knew that I wanted to be in social services all my life. It's just something I've always known. I've always been interested in social sciences and systems and people. And, you know, I've worked with a number of different populations kind of throughout my journey and have really found my home working with this population. And about 4 years ago, I started working with Ascent, and I really love what Ascent 121 does. And for me, more importantly, like how they do it, the way they do it. It just touches me in a way that's just very profound. You know, I feel very at home here. And I've, been here a few years now and really just love every day. And so for me, that's very important to what I do and why I do it.
Well, let's pull the film back on Ascent 121 and give it a purpose for our listeners. And I shall say before I let either of you speak that I come from a long career in hospitality, and there are two huge organizations out there, and I know they're listening. AHOA, Asian American Hotel Owners Association, which has 23,000 members, and AHLA, America Hotel Lodging Association, which has just as many members. And one of the biggest problems that both organizations are trying to fix is what Ascent 121 is all about, and that's human trafficking. And it's just something that needs to go away. It won't go away until everybody figures out why anybody would even meddle in this space. But back to the purpose of Ascent 121, why don't you, first of all, with you, Stephanie, share how do you serve the population as you refer to them, and how do you believe Ascent 121 is leading the country in this kind of services provided to the population?
So what we do primarily is clinical, what we consider clinical or micro services. So we work primarily with families, with the youth, in their homes, in their communities, within the systems that they continuously interact with on a very, independent individual level that just builds empowerment. It's part of the, lead through example, but also lead through trusting and learning from others. And so I think for us, we fill a space that isn't, there's not a lot of services out there that fill that space right now, that really individual one-on-one interaction with the families and youth that help them feel like they have a voice, that help them feel like they have a purpose, that
Right.
help them feel like they have, true worth. And so we come from a different perspective, but that can be incredibly empowering, both for them and for us as well. And so it gives us a different perspective as well. So leading amongst the community, and being able to hear and listen and give voice to a number of different individuals who maybe wouldn't have a voice otherwise is really, really important to our purpose and our mission. And doing it very collaboratively, leading by almost an emergent quality sometimes.
Kim, take it from there and share with us, how do people find Ascent 121, or how does Ascent 121 find people to take care of, whether it's the victim of human trafficking and or his or her family?
Yeah, so I'm going to step back just a second. Ascent provides long-term trauma recovery services to teen survivors primarily of
Okay.
sex trafficking here in Indiana. We're based in Indianapolis, but we have clients across the state. These are kids who have, through no fault of their own, been engaged in sex trafficking. They are anywhere from, I think the youngest we've served over the years is 5 or 6. The bulk of our kids are between the ages of 10 and 15 or 16 for the most part. And these kids who have seen so much evil in the world, for Ascent 121 to come in and to offer this long-term recovery, because it is not you have 6 sessions of counseling and you're good to go. These kids are damaged. And I think Ascent 121 leads in an incredible way in a number of different fields. So first of all, they have survivor mentors. So survivors who have come out of this environment, they're not healthy like a normal child health, right? But they have found a way to cope, found healthy relationships, and they inform a lot of the therapy treatment protocols that the team has developed. They listen to those survivors to understand what they're thinking and how they look at themselves and how they look at the world. And so the treatment plans are customized to each individual, because every kiddo comes in with a different history, different addictions, different emotional needs. And so there's an assessment plan that Ascent 121, our clinical lead and staff psychologist, have developed these assessment tests, which are now in the process of being copyrighted and rolled out to other agencies across the country as part of a consulting arm, because they are groundbreaking.
Yeah.
That is one of the things that drew me to this agency, was they just don't go in and try to make people feel good. They dig down with heart to understand where these kids are coming from and what are reasonable goals for them to try to achieve. I am continually impressed that our therapists can come in and do this work day after day after day in such a dark environment. But they have the servant heart to help these kids find hope and healing.
Yeah, it's impossible to imagine, Kim and Stephanie, as I sit here and listen to how someone becomes a victim, as you said, no fault of their own, how they're preyed upon. I had no idea the amount of revenue people are making in this sick area. It's astounding. And so back to Ascent, tell the listeners a little bit about when did they start, and who were the true founders? And then I'd love to touch on some of the partners, and again, whether they're in this space at all, or they're just partners to make sure that the funding is always there. Either one of you. Let's start with you, Kim, and then Stephanie, prepare maybe for what does it take to be a therapist in this space? So Kim, you first, and then Stephanie.
Sure. So we were founded 9 years ago. And over the course of those 9 years, we have seen, I'd say, somewhere between 800 and 1,000 kids. A little over 100 a year is where we were, and I think we're probably up a little bit. We were founded by Megan Jessup, who is a clinician and has a heart for this population that is just unbelievable. Her partner in this is Megan McGuire, who has a business background, and Jessup invited her to come in as a partner. And I will say that Megan McGuire, throughout the COVID shutdown, which had a huge impact on our revenue, our kiddos, all of it, she did an amazing job of keeping us financially solvent and able to deliver services through different means, but still to be focused on the kids.
Yeah.
So in business, 9 years, we're celebrating this month, 9 years.
Congratulations.
Our partners tend to be, so we get about 50% of our funding from the services we deliver. So kids come to us out of Department of Child Services, DCS, and then we develop the treatment protocol for the child. And most of those services we bill. And so about 50% of our funding is from the direct revenue of treatment.
Okay.
The other 50% is we request a lot of grants. We enroll in the grant process. We have some local churches that are incredible partners. We also have some corporate sponsorship locally that helps with some of our fundraising efforts. And so we work hard to make sure that we are financially stable. One of the things that I think is unique about Ascent is that our kiddos have a phone number for their therapist. And kids in this population, because of trauma bonding, will tend to run back to their trafficker because that's what they know. That's where they feel safe. That's the value they place on their own life, is being trafficked. And they will come back to Ascent, but they have the same phone number of the same therapist that they come back to. And so we don't grow beyond our financial means to make sure that kids that run and want to come back have that same contact, that same point of contact, so they're not re-victimized by retelling their story over and over and over again. So,
speaking of the people that serve the victims, Stephanie, tell us a little bit about how you find the therapist. And I mean, can't imagine the patience and the heart they have for the people that you serve. Tell us a little bit about them and how do you lead that group?
Yeah, it's a very special group. They're very near and dear to my heart. The job isn't easy, and so it's really not for everyone. It takes a level of creativity and thinking outside the box and wanting to work very collaboratively on different teams. But I've just been blessed. Most of our team has, interacted with us in other places, and so we've been easy to onboard them. As far as like leading, anything in social services, but especially this particular population, I think it comes from the root that it's just a very humbling experience. It's a very humbling place of employment and job, and how you handle that experience really, in my experience, seems to develop you into a good leader or not, and if you can take that experience and not maybe take fault in it and really turn it into a place of compassion. I think that for me in this field, the leaders that I have worked for or been around that have just been able to approach things compassionately, understanding the difficulty, understanding that, advocating for clients or working these systems can feel very daunting, can feel very overwhelming, can feel, like there maybe isn't a solution or end in sight, and being able to lead through that feeling and being able to validate it, and being able to just be authentically present, I think is really a strong leadership quality, at least in the social service field, I'm sure in others as well. But that sense of compassion and understanding.
Absolutely. Whether you're in this industry or any other, and as an executive coach and a leadership development consultant, I talk about the same principles all the time. Kim, are you familiar with the term servant leadership? And if so, yeah, I figured you might be. What does it mean to you, and how does it play a part, large or small, in your life, regardless of what you'd be doing for a living?
So I've had the blessing of working for several over the years who were servant leaders, um, which fits my leadership style, and it's what I look for in a leader. When I led teams, to me, it's about caring about the future of each individual on the team, and that they are able to contribute to whatever it is, whether it's the bottom line in a business or the success of a campaign, that they are contributing to the best of their ability. It's coaching when someone needs additional uh, expertise or self-confidence. How do you get them to that next level? To me, that's servant leadership. When it comes to Ascent 121, I don't look at myself as a servant leader because I'm not actually on the front lines. What I do try to embody is when I'm speaking to audiences to educate, raise awareness, et cetera, is to demonstrate the leadership of the team that's working front lines for us. Those hearts are, in fact, one of the things we ask for when I am out raising awareness is that folks would think about creating thank you cards or cards of encouragement for our staff. And just periodically they end up in their mailboxes so that they know they're appreciated for the things they're doing. And so it's just bringing some of that into this organization. It's full of servant leaders. And so how do I continue to encourage them from my limited role with them?
Beautiful. I mean, Robert Greenleaf in the early 70s deserves a lot of credit for putting servant leadership on the map. But let's be honest. There's this guy named Jesus who is a pretty darn good servant leader, and that's where it really all starts. And is it faith-based? It could be. Is it believe in somebody else and serve them accordingly first? Yes, and then lead them. So servant leadership to me is you serve somebody, you take care of someone, you have empathy for someone else, and then you lead them. And it's in my opinion, and I've had many people on the show say the same thing, it's really the only kind of leadership. It's intentional, it's responsible, it's emotional, but again, it's the purest form of showing up for another human being is to serve them, period. And doing it by an example so others around you can watch without saying a word is, in my opinion, the best way to example servant leadership. Stephanie, same question to you. When you heard the term the first time, and I don't believe it's on this show, what were your thoughts? And again, same question to you. How does servant leadership play a role in your life?
Yeah, so I think the first time that I had heard about the idea of servant leadership, it really seemed to connect. It really does overlap with a lot of social work principles, which you can imagine. Although it feels to disconnect from my experiences of what I've been taught a leader was and what it should be and how to be in charge, how to have that power and lead. And so I've really grasped onto it because of the way it really aligns with the principles of what we do. Anyway, and like Kim said, it's very prominent in the agency culture already. But what really hits for me as servant leadership is kind of something you mentioned. And for me, it's that emotion, it's that feeling. I think when you are in a servant leadership relationship, you feel a space that makes you feel safe and secure. And that really allows you to maybe develop that potential or to learn and make mistakes or grow. And without that feeling, like sometimes I'm not even sure that I can articulate which principle or what, value it is that makes that feeling. But without that feeling, I don't know that leadership is as strong because you really have to feel like you're listened to and that, that you're in a safe space to just feel like you're getting the benefit of that leadership.
Yeah, to echo what you just said, Stephanie, we get to feel that way. We don't have to. And when a leader is leading from a place of servant heart, the follower or the child or the member of the team knows that they can trust the leader. Because leaders don't need to be in charge. They don't need to be dictators. They don't need to be managers or rulers. They simply need to be curious and ask a question like this every so often. How may I serve you? Now, a 10 or 12 or 15-year-old who just went through something like what we're talking about today may not even know what to say, but the parents do, and your clinicians do, your therapists do. The leadership of Ascent 121 knows what questions to ask. And I believe when a leader shows up curious with the intention to serve the person they're speaking to the best of their ability, and it's not about you, leader, it's about your follower. And I say that over and over and over because leadership is not about the leader, but it starts with the leader. And in my opinion, I'd love your comment on this too, Kim. It sounds like you've worked with some amazing men and women in your career. The trait of a leader that really stands out to you to make him or her a great leader is what? And name 2 or 3 if you'd like.
It is, I'm thinking about the last one that I worked for, and it was a man who truly cared about not just the success of the business, but the success of each individual team member, the quality of what we delivered, and how did we work together to make that happen. He understood me and what drove me to be successful, why I was doing what I was doing. He was that way with every member of our team. And because of that, he built a team that was very cohesive and performed at a high level. I don't think individually any of us would have been able to do in the past. So it's the empathy, it's listening, and it's actually caring, not just about the outcome, but how the people get to the outcome.
Yeah. Outcomes don't happen without people. So whoever you're referring to, and give this person a name if you'd like to, but he was on to something, that recognizing that there is nothing without people. There's nothing without relationships. And a good servant leader focuses on that. And I say it every day. Language, behavior, relationships. And we language by what we believe is true. We behave if you're a servant leader, on what you believe is best for the follower. Again, not you. Stephanie, how about you? What trait or traits do you believe make a great leader, servant leader or not?
There's so many. I mean, I love to echo what Kim had mentioned. In what you're saying, the relationship for me is incredibly important. But I think prominently that integrity, that authenticity, those are what connect it to the relationship that I really find differentiates quality of leadership. Again, to be motivated to do what we do every day and want to keep doing it takes a certain level of connection. And I think that for me, that integrity, those role models, are interchanged into that good leadership.
Absolutely. We could talk all day about this topic, and what we ask our leaders, our followers and listeners on this show to consider is what if? What if we could be better just a little bit more each and every day? How could we show up with more integrity, a little bit more accountability, more courage? And to me, courage doesn't mean to eliminate fear. It's to recognize what you're afraid of and step into it anyway, and have that one conversation that might change the whole relationship for the better, instead of avoiding it or delivering the burden to someone else to talk to you. And we've covered passion and humility. So when I mentioned the Leadership Development Day to Ascent 121 and you heard about it, Kim, what were your first thoughts? And how did you know that Ascent 121 and Aden Leadership, my company, but more importantly, the intention of Leadership Development Day, what attracted you to being involved?
So first of all, I thought, wow, I wish I were able to go just as an attendee. It sounds wonderful. People don't talk about leadership enough. They don't train for leadership. They train for management. They train you how to run the systems and fill out the paperwork and all of those. How do you encourage and train a leader? And so that alone made me very excited for the day. The opportunity to speak to a community of people who are working towards that leadership model, especially a servant leadership model, and to share the Ascent 121 message and mission across that audience, I think is huge. It's a way for us to, again, educate on what is child sex trafficking and what isn't it, because there's a lot of misconceptions. How big is it? How do I help? The more people I can inspire to investigate and somehow engage, whether with Ascent 121 or in their own local communities with sex trafficking, anti-sex trafficking support. These children, we call them kiddos, clients, these children need all the help that they can get. And that includes the support that Stephanie and her team provide, but it also means prayer. Our Ascent 121 name came from Psalm 121, which is a psalm of ascent. It's why we do what we do. It's not necessarily how, but we truly believe that without the leading of God, we cannot help these kids overcome what they have been through.
Yeah,
So that all gets me excited to engage with the Leadership Development Day.
Well, can't wait to see you light up the stage, to those that are going to be in person and to the thousands live streaming. Kim, can't thank you enough for wanting to speak on behalf of Ascent 121 during the day. And Stephanie, what's your final message to the listeners about how we understand how you serve the victims, but in your honest opinion, as a professional in this industry, what's one thing we can do as a country, as a state, if you're focusing just on Indiana, but to start to eliminate it? Because certainly there wouldn't be victims if we didn't have the problem. So how do we start to eliminate the problem? And be as bold as you want.
That is a very big question.
I've got all day.
Yeah, I don't know that I can answer that. There's a lot of systemic components. It's not just a one personal experience. It's all of these factors that play into it, which is why the treatment and the experience is so complex. But really, to tie it back to kind of what we're talking about, so often I see people who have what I would consider great potential to be great leaders and maybe just don't know it themselves, don't know what that looks like. You know, if we're training people for management, maybe that's not what they want. And so they don't even really fulfill their capacity to be great leaders because we don't talk about it. Okay. And so even on a very local level, even with the clients we serve and the community members we interact with, there are so many amazing individuals out here that I really want to encourage to look at the possibility of growing in that leadership role. And however they can expose themselves to more information about it and really, consider their potential.
Well, I'm gonna commit to two things. One, I'm going to communicate loudly to the hotel ownership in the state of Indiana and get them to be more aware of what Ascent 121 is all about and how they can help by obviously keeping their, call it the lower end brands more safe. And I know it happens in the bigger brands as well. I'm not singling out anybody, but I do know the industry. And secondly, I'm going to sign up for pro bono coaching, leadership development coaching for anybody that you all come in contact with. And we can do it through Courageous Conversations webinar, Principles of Leadership webinar. We can have 20, 50 people on a Zoom at a time and just start to lean into them a little bit about what does leadership mean. And we don't have to be servant leaders right away. Let's just understand the concept of what true leadership is. So with that, any last final words, Kim, and then Stephanie to you, and then we'll say goodbye. Kim?
No, I appreciate the opportunity for the agency for us to share, and thank you so much for facilitating this. It's a great blessing to us.
My pleasure. Stephanie?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. It's been very refreshing to engage in this conversation. And so I thank you for that.
But to both of you, thank you for the work you do in this huge area of need. And to our listeners, thank you for chiming in. Again, this is Greg Aden with Aden Leadership for another episode of Servant Leadership Podcast. Thank you.